3 nights in a row. That scratching sound right inside the wall behind your bed. You already know what it is, and honestly, that's the worst part. Because you've dealt with this before. You spent money, set traps, called someone out, and here you are again, lying awake at midnight, listening. Here's what I need you to understand right now. The reason mice keep coming back to your home has nothing to do with how clean your house is, how many traps you've set, or how much you've spent on pest control. The reason they keep coming back is that nobody ever told you the actual truth about how they get in. And once you hear it, once you actually understand what's been happening inside your walls this whole time, you're going to be genuinely angry that this was never explained to you before. What I'm about to walk you through costs about $2. It takes one afternoon. And it works permanently, not temporarily, not seasonally, permanently. I know that sounds like a bold claim. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly why it works, why it was never taught to you, and exactly how to do it yourself this weekend. Before we go further, if you're new here, this channel is about exactly this kind of thing. Real practical knowledge that somehow got lost between generations. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications because what's coming in the next few weeks is going to change how you think about your home entirely. Now let's get into it. Here's the piece of information that the pest control industry has quietly, deliberately avoided putting in front of you. A fully grown house mouse can compress its body and move through a gap smaller than a standard pencil eraser. We're talking about a 1/4 inch. That's it. The space around your water pipes under the kitchen sink, the gap where your dryer vent exits through the wall, the thin line where your foundation stone meets the wooden frame of your house. To a mouse, every single one of those openings is a front door with a welcome mat. Now here's the question you should be asking. Why, after all the money the pest control industry makes, we're talking about a $9 billion annual industry in the United States, why has not one single company ever handed you a permanent fix for this? Why is it always quarterly visits, seasonal spray, bait stations that need refilling, traps that need replacing? The answer is uncomfortable, but it's simple. Closing the door permanently doesn't generate recurring revenue. Keeping you dependent does. And here's the part that genuinely got under my skin when I first learned it. The permanent fix has existed for well over a century. It was being used reliably in farmhouses across rural Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Indiana long before any of us were born. And the material at the center of it? You can buy it right now at any hardware store or farm supply for roughly $2 per linear foot. It's called 1/4 inch galvanized hardware cloth. That's it. That's the thing. I want to tell you how I first found this out because the story matters. A few years ago, I was in Holmes County, Ohio, and if you know anything about that part of the country, you know it's deep Amish country. I was talking to a farmer whose family had lived in the same wooden farmhouse since the late 1800s. We're talking about a structure surrounded by agricultural land, fields of corn, grain, oats, the exact environment where mouse populations explode every single season. I walked into his pantry expecting to see traps, expecting to smell that chemical scent of pest spray. Instead, I found open barrels, open grain storage, flour sitting in cloth sacks on wooden shelves, and not one single sign of rodent activity. No droppings, no gnaw marks, nothing. I asked him directly, how? He looked at me like the answer was obvious. He walked me down to his cellar and showed me the foundation seam, a thin, continuous line where the stone foundation met the wooden sill plate of the house, packed tight all the way around, with a material his grandfather had installed over 100 years earlier, still doing its job. Not one repair in over a century. That afternoon changed how I thought about home maintenance entirely. Now let me explain the actual method, because the technique matters just as much as the material. Most people who've heard of hardware cloth have made the same mistake. They cut a piece, lay it flat against a hole, and staple it in place. That approach fails within a year. The mice just work the edges. They find the gap between the cloth and the wall surface, and they're back inside your home before you've even stopped congratulating yourself. The method that actually works is different, and it's almost embarrassingly simple once you see it. Instead of laying the cloth flat, you cut a piece about 2 inches wider than the opening on every side, and then you push the center of it slightly into the hole, creating a shallow dome or cup shape that extends into the cavity rather than sitting flat against it. Then you fold the edges back against the surrounding surface and fasten them down with galvanized roofing nails or stainless steel screws. Never standard steel. Standard steel rusts, and once it rusts, the structural grip is gone. The reason this cup shape works so well is mechanical. When a mouse tries to chew through a flat surface, it can get leverage. Its front teeth can grip, bite down, and work an edge. But a curved surface, there's nothing to grip. The teeth slip off. The pressure distributes around the curve, and the animal gets no purchase. Pest biology researchers at Penn State documented this in a 2017 extension study. Properly installed quarter-inch galvanized hardware cloth in this configuration stopped 100% of rodent intrusion attempts. Not 90%. Not almost all of them. Every single one. But here's what most people miss, and this is the part that separates a fix that holds for 6 months from one that holds for 60 years. Even after you seal every physical opening, there's still a second problem working against you. Mice communicate through scent. If a family of mice has ever lived in your walls, even years ago, they left behind a chemical trail in their urine and droppings. That scent signal doesn't disappear on its own. It lingers inside the wall cavity and acts like a biological advertisement to every passing mouse. This structure is safe. This is a known nesting location. Come inside. You can seal every hole on the exterior perfectly and still have mice trying to dig new entry points, because the scent inside your walls is pulling them in like a magnet. The old-time builders in Pennsylvania and Ohio solved this with a mixture so simple, it almost sounds like it couldn't work. Equal parts of dried crushed peppermint leaf, powdered cayenne pepper, and common table salt. Before you seal a cavity, you work this mixture into the space first. The peppermint disrupts the existing pheromone trail. It essentially overwrites the scent signal that's been advertising your home to rodents. The cayenne creates a chemical irritant that discourages any mouse that tries to dig through from the outside. The salt draws moisture out of the cavity and prevents the organic components of the mixture from breaking down into mold. A Cornell University study from 2019 found that dried peppermint leaf was actually more effective than concentrated peppermint oil at repelling rodents, because the slow, steady release of the compound from the dry leaf material outlasts a liquid treatment by a significant margin. The Amish figured this out through observation long before any university got involved. Now, I want to talk about something that almost nobody in this space has addressed, because it's the reason your house keeps attracting mice even after you've done everything right. It comes down to pressure, air pressure specifically. Your home in winter is operating under what's called negative pressure. Every exhaust fan in your bathroom, your range hood over the stove, your dryer vent, your furnace, all of these systems push air out of your living space. That air has to be replaced by something. And in a home with even small gaps in the foundation, the walls, the attic, your house is constantly drawing outside air in through those openings. That moving air carries the warmth and scent of your home, food, heat, the smell of human habitation, out into the cold night air like a signal beacon. A mouse can detect temperature differentials and scent trails from significant distances. Your house, in winter, is essentially advertising itself constantly to every rodent in the area. Here's what's interesting. A 1923 USDA Agricultural Bulletin, Farmer's Bulletin 1432, if you want to look it up yourself, documented a construction technique used by German farming communities in eastern Pennsylvania called a pressure-neutral foundation. The concept is exactly what it sounds like. You install a single passive air intake in your basement, just a 4-inch round opening covered with hardware cloth, positioned low on the north-facing wall. No fan, no mechanical system, no electricity, just a dedicated opening. What this does is give your home's exhaust systems a specific, controlled place to draw replacement air from instead of pulling it through dozens of hidden cracks. The scent leak disappears. The invisible beacon your home has been broadcasting goes dark. The modern construction industry calls this type of opening a building defect and instead sells you a mechanical ventilation system costing thousands of dollars that accomplishes the same thing with far more complexity. The passive version costs $15 in materials and 2 hours of your time. I've been in a lot of basements since I started researching this. I've pulled copper mesh plugs out of foundation gaps that were installed in the 1940s. Still intact, still functional, with no degradation that would have let anything through. I've stood in farmhouses where the same sealing work done by a grandfather was still protecting his grandchildren's groceries 70 years later, and every time I come back to the same question. Why was this never passed down? Why did this knowledge get replaced with a quarterly service contract? I think the honest answer is that simple, permanent solutions are very difficult to build a business around. You can't sell a subscription to a one-time fix. You can't bill someone quarterly for work that only needs to be done once. The economics of modern pest control depend entirely on the problem never being fully solved. The moment your house is genuinely sealed, physically, chemically, and in terms of air pressure, you are no longer a customer. Let me give you the starting point if you want to actually do this. On a cold evening, go to your basement with a flashlight and hold your hand near the seam where your foundation meets the wooden sill plate. If you feel air movement, that's your first priority. The continuous seam runs the entire perimeter of your house, and in most homes built before the 1990s, it's either partially open or packed with insulation that has deteriorated to the point of being useless. Start there. Pack the peppermint mixture in first, then install your hardware cloth strips using the cup method I described, securing them with screws every 6 inches. Work your way around the perimeter. Then move to the obvious penetrations, pipes, vents, cable lines, any place where something passes through your exterior wall. You don't have to do this all in one day. The farmers in Holmes County didn't do it in one day either. They did it gradually, over generations, adding to the work each time something new was run through the structure. The point is to start. Pick the 3 most obvious spots this weekend. That alone will make a noticeable difference within the first month. I want to end with something that doesn't get said enough in conversations about home maintenance. The stress of living with this problem is real. That low-level anxiety that follows you from room to room, the hesitation before you open a cabinet, the irritation every time you hear movement in the wall at night, it accumulates. It affects your sleep. It affects how you feel in your own home. The farmers I've spoken with about why this kind of maintenance mattered so much to their communities didn't talk about saving money, though the savings are significant. They talked about peace, about the specific comfort of knowing that the boundary between inside and outside was solid, was real, and was theirs to maintain. That's worth more than any quarterly service contract. That's worth a Saturday afternoon and about $15 in materials. And unlike almost anything else you'll spend money on related to your home, it's a fix that will still be protecting your house long after you're gone. If you've watched this far, you already know you're going to try this. Drop a comment below and tell me where the mice have been getting in. Under the sink, the basement corner, behind the water heater, and I'll tell you exactly which part of this method addresses your specific situation. Every comment helps the next person searching for this at 2 in the morning find what they need. Share this with one person who's dealing with this right now. Subscribe if you haven't already, because next week we're getting into the basement waterproofing technique that mainstream construction stopped using in the 1950s. And the reason it was abandoned has nothing to do with whether it works. The answers were never lost. They were just made inconvenient to find. Keep looking,